So good morning everybody and welcome to the first instalment of the Refine podcast. For those of you that don't recognise the voice, my name's Kate. I'm your podcast host for today. I think over this series we will have numerous hosts for you lucky people. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm one of the exec recruiters for Refined. I also like the sound of my own voice, which is why I'm here for you today. So we actually came out to you guys and asked you what you wanted to hear more about. And the overwhelming response that we actually got was wellbeing at work. So thank you for everybody that did reply. The feedback was much appreciated. Wellbeing is a really hot topic at the moment. There's been a lot of press, particularly, Mental Health Awareness Day was recently. There's lots of talk around flexible working, how we make work a better place to be. And actually, we recently held a HR Directors Forum where we discussed wellbeing at work and whether companies are doing enough, also whether employees are doing enough. And that was really interesting. It was really well received. So we thought this would be a really good place to elaborate further. Now, today I've also got a very special guest with me. I've got a lady called Cleland joining us, who also very kindly came along to our forum. She is the founder and creator of Workhappy, which is a wellbeing app, which we will discuss in a bit more detail a little bit later on. But for those of you who don't know Anna, if Anna would like to introduce herself, that would be great.
Hi, yeah. My name's Anna Cleland. I've been working in the world of career development, coaching and employee engagement for about the last 20 years or so. In the early days, really supporting people who'd been made redundant and just seeing how through some simple support, they transition off into new roles with excitement and energy. So that was a really fundamental part of my early career. And then more latterly, the last 10 years spent working with organisations focused really on employee engagement and wellbeing.
Thank you. So obviously you feel really strongly about, wellbeing at work and people taking accountability, both employees and employers, around wellbeing at work. So what inspired you to get involved in that space?
I think it was probably more born out of the frustration of the last 10 years, if I'm honest. So I've spent 10 years running employee engagement surveys for organisations and just getting more and more frustrated seeing organisations get frustrated at the lack of movement in those stats and results and desperately trying to do the right thing often, but failing to really shift the needle and the metrics just not changing over time. So I think, for me, one of the things also is there's a lot of confusion in organisations, I find, about whether we're talking about engagement or employee experience or wellbeing or performance or creating a coaching culture. They're all separate initiatives often. But for me, they're also intertangled. Wellbeing is a key part of engagement. So they're all, for me, that's about understanding what do we mean by some of these things and how they all play into each other rather than just looking at wellbeing, for example, on its own.
Yeah. And you're right. I think wellbeing plays into engagement, but I also think engagement plays into wellbeing, because if people aren't interested in looking after themselves, then it doesn't matter what initiatives you do at work, they're not always going to land in the way that you want them to.
Absolutely. And it's a key passion of mine. I'll come on to it again a bit later when we talk about the app, that, what I came to realise is organisations have got all sorts of tools at their disposal. But actually what I've started to ask people is, where's the tool for encouraging self-reflection and self-care? And actually we don't have one of those. They don't exist in organisations at the minute. So I think that piece of encouraging individuals to kind of stop and think about how they're feeling and what's going on for them is really, really critical.
Clearly, we've seen some really interesting facts and figures around this, and I know that we talked about it in the forum, which was 59% of people take long-term sick for mental health problems.
Yeah.
I think 83% of people go to work when they're unwell, which obviously is, I know myself, I've been to work when I'm not well. I'm sure that everybody's guilty of, going to work when they're not well. And I think there's a big piece perhaps around fostering an environment whereby it's okay to be unwell and, it's, taking time off sick. I think sometimes it's seen as a bad thing and can be discouraged. Whereas I know, here in our office, if there's a faintest sign of illness, I mean, we're a small business, there's only 7 of us. If any of us are ill, we're actively encouraged to stay at home. But I appreciate in some businesses, that's, absolutely not the case. So, I mean, why do you think now, particularly more than ever, it's important for people to be focusing on well-being, both employers and employees?
I think there's one thing before I answer that question that's fundamentally for me, it's about us understanding what do we mean by well-being, because like you say, we talked a lot about whether it's being sickness and sickness due to stress or anxiety, whatever it is, but actually for me, well-being is so much more than one thing or any one small group of things. So some people focus very much on health initiatives, some people focus on fitness, some people focus on mental health, but actually well-being is much broader than that.
Yes.
It's about different things for different people. And I think that's part of the key. It says whatever it is that means people are going off sick, that might not be due to stress and anxiety and workload, for example. For some people, that may be there's just a really difficult relationship at work that's causing difficulty for that individual. So it can be lots of different things for different people. And I think it's about all aspects of an individual's working life, not just individual elements of it. And I think that's one of the things that's got confused a little bit. But what we know fundamentally is that if an individual has a positive experience at work and feels good at work, whatever that is for them, actually it helps prevent anxiety and stress and they can thrive.
Yeah, and I also think just putting in there, not just work well-being, but actually I think financial well-being has a really big impact on
Absolutely.
Physical well-being. I know people when they've been really difficult financial situations, that's had a massive impact on them personally, on their relationships, on how they feel at work, how they perform at work. So I think you're right, you have to look at much wider things. There's financial needs, there's social needs, there's emotional needs. It's not just let's get everybody fit and healthy.
Absolutely. And I think the world's starting to broaden out to some of that, and again the newest kind of piece to add to that agenda is the mental health piece. But for me it's all of the above all the time, and different things for different people.
And it's interesting, isn't it, because I think we see a lot of initiatives now, and I also think some people, and I'll just say use it as a photo opportunity, use it as a bit of a gimmick, post it all over LinkedIn and Facebook, look at how great we are, we've got beanbags and pool tables, and actually that more is around culture to me rather than well-being, and it's an interesting one. I think there's some really great things out there, but also some real crap too.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's a balance of all sorts, whether it's, competitions around how many steps can you do or whatever, on your Fitbit. So those things are good, but they're not, for me, the fundamental underlying piece around wellbeing. So those are fun. They have some good health benefits. I wouldn't do away with any of those, and the yoga and the fresh fruit and instead of chocolates and all of that sort of stuff is all good. But fundamentally for me, there's a deeper level, which is about what's the right thing for each individual to show that their employer cares about them, all the hard work and the goodwill and the effort that they're putting into their work, what's the employer doing to look after them, and that's the big question. And that's where we see, as long as you feel cared for, that you're important, that somebody cares and the organization is actually trying to do the right thing by you, that's when you'll release your discretionary effort, go the extra mile, adopt change, support innovation, and all those benefits that we know about.
So obviously you've worked with lots of organisations around engagement and around wellbeing. What are some of the the really great initiatives that you've seen sort of in real time that have actually had an impact?
It's a really hard piece because I think the world's still on a bit of a journey, or many organisations certainly are on a bit of a journey around exploring that. And I'm not quite sure the reason why we're having a bit of traction out there in the marketplace is it's this bringing together of different bits that is still the next bit of the journey I think that we need to travel on. It says we're still treating well-being separately to employee experience, separately to our performance management program, separately to, and I think that's when organizations start to tie those conversations and those initiatives and start to look at the interwovenness of those, that's where they're doing good stuff.
Yeah, and I think, there's some things that I've seen, and I'm not going to name company names because I don't want to get sued or anything. I'm not sure whether I'll get in trouble. But some things that I've seen that are really interesting is one organisation did some psychology around when people get paid every month and how people get paid every month. And I know there's an organisation that allow people to choose when throughout the month they get paid. And it's kind of giving people that control and that ownership over their finances, because it's not convenient for everybody to get paid at the end of the month. I also know in some businesses, for example, where they have flexible workers, so people who are doing additional shifts or they kind of just temp from one place to the other, they're actually doing same day pay for flexible workers. So they don't have to wait a month to get that money. So I think from a financial perspective, there's some really interesting stuff.
And I think if you take that out and explore that a bit further, what's really great about that is that they're offering options. So people can choose what's right for them. And those are the best things that I've seen out there. What we've also fallen into the trap of a little bit is making wholesale decisions for our whole organisation. So saying, right, we're going to go to monthly pay for everyone, or we're going to go to, some pay scheme for everyone, or we're going to have flexible workings for everyone, or we're going to have this for everyone. And that's when it starts to really fall down, in my view, that says when everybody has to be governed by one way of working. I mean, the good example of that is the issue of evening emails. Many organisations initially responded to that by saying, right, stop email traffic after 8 o'clock at night. But for so many people, that doesn't work. And so many people who work flexibly, that doesn't work. But it's about how do we help people to understand what's right for them and how do they manage what's right for other people.
Yeah, very, very true. And it's interesting, actually, I see more and more on emails from my clients is that, I'm emailing you at this time because it's convenient for me. I don't expect you to respond outside of working hours. And it's kind of just, you're taking some of that accountability away from the responder, because I know, I have a lot of my clients will email me at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and you feel, when you've read that email, you feel obliged to respond because you've read it. And I think sometimes, within a business, just having that disclaimer. For example, I have a separate work mobile. So on a weekend, my work mobile goes in my bag on a Friday and I don't pick it up again till a Monday. There's other people in my office who use their work phone as their personal phone, and so they respond to emails at the weekend. And I think it has to be an individual choice, and you're absolutely right, not a blanket decision for everybody based on what one person wants to do.
Yeah, and I think it's also about empowering people to be able to articulate what's right for them and why, and understand that in the first place and work it out for themselves, and not feel guilty that maybe not checking the phone at the weekend isn't right for that person. But come to a settled place for themselves, and then secondly, help people to say, how are you going to interact with other people around this then, and help other people understand. And it's not just about saying, well, I don't check my email at weekends, but perhaps having a slightly broader dialogue about helping the other person to understand why and the impact and what you do instead. So it's about how do we start to be more aware of what's right for us, and how do we articulate to others why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another one is around this flexible working piece, or people now, I know an organisation, for example, that now close at 12:45 on a Friday, and everybody gets either Friday afternoon off, which is a lovely idea. But actually, some people would probably much rather value being able to take that half day whenever throughout the week that they need it. Again, it's kind of a blanket decision that people assume that everybody will be happy with. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm sure a lot of people, I'm sure everybody would be happy with having a half a day on a Friday and finishing at Friday lunchtime. But actually, for some people, that half a day could be much better used elsewhere and would add more value.
Yeah, and those things are better as well when they are truly part of the culture of that organisation, rather than just, so you talked about the sort of slides and the table, pool tables and stuff at work. Those things are great when they're truly part of the culture, or are they more gimmicky things? So, if people can still get their work done and leave at 12 o'clock on a Friday or whatever time it was, great. But actually, if all it's doing is putting loads of stress on people Friday morning and Thursday afternoon, because they haven't got the rest of Friday to finish off, but the deadlines still have to be hit. It's about what other changes are happening to make sure that that's not adding more stress and more problems for people.
Now, obviously, there's lots of, technology and different things now happening to empower people and help people with their well-being and circumstances. And I know there's a lot in the kind of financial space. And there's some of these things now. And one of them is actually one that really concerns me that I'll just touch on. I'm sure there's a few things that, you're not so keen on, but there are certain organisations now that allow you to get early access to your month's salary.
Yeah.
I won't name said organisations because, again, I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble. But for me, that's a concern because, the idea of it is that, you have an emergency, your boiler breaks, and you can get access to that money early to fix something. Well, that's great, but then when you get paid, you're not getting that money back. So you're in a deficit the following month. And does that then become a habit of continually living outside of your means? And continually having to get early access to your salary every month.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think it's about how we support people around those sorts of things. I mean, I would like to think that there's a piece that says there's a set amount that's untouchable of your salary that is kind of you put aside that says you're okay at the end of the month still. But yes, like all of those things we know with the payday loan stuff, actually it snowballs very quickly if there are limited controls around that.
Yeah, and as an interested accountant, I actually work with a couple of organisations who offer instead workplace loans. So something like that happens and they have a pot of money that you can loan from that you then can kind of pay back bit by bit interest free. Which again, is a blanket thing, might not work for everybody, but for me is a much safer option.
Yeah, and like we said before, it's about having options that are right for different people, isn't it? And not saying, right, well, this is the one system. It's about having a range of systems in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know something that we've spoken about before was that, wellbeing initiatives only work if people are engaged with it, but also if people are empowered as individuals to take accountability for their own well-being as well. It can't just be a one-way street.
Yeah.
And I think that, your app, allows people to do that really well. Now, I know some people may not have come across your app and what it does. So do you mind just kind of telling the audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think it's a really key part. And what we've seen systematically over the last sort of 10, 15 years is organisations, first of all, kind of taking the reins or sitting in the driving seat and controlling or owning processes across the organisation. And more recently, we're seeing that trend towards actually, we know that's unsustainable. The organisation can't keep doing that. And for me, they shouldn't be doing that, certainly in terms of wellbeing and engagement, that they have a role to play, but it's not only sitting with them. And I think what that's created is a climate where individuals kind of sit there and go, well, I've told you what's wrong, what are you going to do about it? And actually, we need to start reversing some of that now and start to say, okay, well, what do you think is wrong? What do you think needs to change? And what could you do to start supporting that for yourself? And I think that's quite a big shift in organisations. The people that I talk to a lot around Workhappy, and I'll come on to tell you a bit more about that shortly, but it's very much about getting HR and line managers and senior management out of the mindset of saying we have to own people's problems and fix them for them. Actually, where it starts to become much more a coaching approach, you say, actually, it's not my problem. I can help you understand it and how you want to fix it for yourself. And if we glean some stuff out of some higher level trends, that means there's some stuff we need to look at organisationally or in terms of our culture, then those are the things that leadership own. But it's very much about helping people to explore what's going on for themselves. So Workhappy was born out of that belief, really, which says, how do we start to help individuals to be more aware of what's going on for themselves, more aware of how they're really feeling, and more importantly, explore that at a deeper level, which is not sort of front of the brain stuff, but actually let's go through and examine that properly a bit deeper. What do I really want to be different? And what one thing can I do to help myself move forwards? So Workhappy is all about helping that self-exploration and self-action that starts to move things in a more positive direction for yourself.
Brilliant. I mean, it's a bit it's like doing a self-inventory, isn't it? I think, you hear a lot of people go, I'm really I'm really unhappy at work. Okay, well, why are you unhappy? What are the reasons behind that? What can you do to impact those feelings? What do you need support with? And, people kind of checking in with themselves a little bit, because, we hear, people go, oh, I'm not happy about this, or I'm not happy about that. And it's like, well, why has that happened? Why does it make you unhappy? What's impacting that, and, what's the result of that? And, what can you do to help that? But also, what can we do to help that? And I think it has to be a joined up approach. It can't just be one person saying, well, I'm unhappy, you need to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're talking about there is, and the basis of Workhappy is about, without a coach, why coaching is so popular is because doing that exploration on our own needs an awful lot of self-discipline. and it's hard to do, that's why coaching is so effective. So what we've tried to do is take the essence of all the best coaching models that are out there and help individuals to self-guide through that thinking, because often what we think is going on is not really what it is when we explore and question ourselves at a slightly deeper level, and then go, actually, no, that's not the issue. That's actually the issue. And that's what I want to be different. And so therefore, that's what I need to do, which isn't something that would have come to mind straight off the top of the head. So it is about that deeper exploration. And that's hard to do just without a framework, without a guide, without somebody leading you through a process.
Yeah. And have you been getting good feedback from this? Have you sort of been, of companies that you've been working with, been trying out the app and how it works?
We've been getting some amazing feedback. And I think the biggest thing that we're proud of is that two bits of feedback, really. One, that people, again, there's nothing that they've seen out there like this at the minute. So we've really hit upon a completely new approach to really helping to put the individual in the driving seat and start to help them help themselves. And secondly, the piece that I alluded to earlier, which is about actually what it starts to do is it starts to enable people to come around, the HR team to come around the table on engagement, wellbeing, performance, coaching insights, and say, actually, all of this happens within this one approach. And how do we start to integrate everything across our people strategy around these things and start to integrate our insights with each other, rather than run the wellbeing stream as a completely separate stream to the performance management stream to the engagement stream. But actually where they all start to come together with their insights and say, at the back end of Workhappy, you can also measure those insights and start to say, okay, well, this is what people, this is the level of, well-being or motivational drive or how people feel towards our organization. And you can start to really use those insights across the broader people strategy.
And do you think something like this longer term could replace the current kind of employee engagement surveys and things that we see within businesses?
Absolutely. So for me, it's about a longer term game, if you like. So it won't replace it tomorrow because we won't drive the metrics that hard. But certainly for me, it's about saying, unless we start on a new culture shift journey now, fast forward 3 years, we won't be in anywhere different from where we are today. So longer term, absolutely, definitely. If we can start getting people to be more aware of what they're feeling and doing things differently. And the crux also is where we see this really starting to gain some traction, is about how do we integrate those insights into the performance conversations. Again, a bugbear of mine is that performance conversations have been about performance and development, but not engagement or well-being. So if we start to get people talking openly about what they've learned about themselves and what they want to be done differently, over the longer term, if we're having better conversations, our managers are coaching around that conversation and that process better, actually people will share many more of their insights much more willingly. So actually the quality and quantity of insight that you get will just blow the engagement stuff out of the water.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I've obviously been with you. I've kind of seen the platform and, heard people who've used it and have got great, impact and results from it. So for the people that don't know, how can they find out more about Workhappy?
You can go online for the moment to findyourworkhappy.com and find out more about that. Or if you'll post my contact details, feel free to give me a ring. We're happy, really exploring with people at the minute. We're in our early adopter phase, so we're looking for organisations that just want to find out more, maybe want to help us refine and learn and develop this, and just want to explore how they can start to impact individual accountability around engagement and wellbeing. So anyone who wants to get in touch, go on the website or get in touch through Refind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if anybody does want to know more or wants Anna's contact details, feel free to give us a shout. Anna's normally around at our events as well. So if you come to Thursday Brunch and you happen to be at one of the forums and she's there, she's always happy to have a chat. So I think that's kind of everything that we wanted to cover off. So have you got any kind of final thoughts or any words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with, Anna?
I think the key takeaway for me is when thinking about your wellbeing strategy at work, think actually, are we giving enough options, or are we making wholesale decisions for our entire population? So it's about personalising engagement and wellbeing, and if you can start to really question your own strategies around that, you'll be going a long way to supporting people's wellbeing.
Well said. Thank you very much. Well, that's everything for today. Anna, thank you very much for joining our first ever podcast. The podcast will now be a monthly edition. We are keen to hear feedback and to hear from you guys about what you want us to talk about, or if you want to be involved with the podcast and come and say your piece and get your opinions across, then feel free to get in touch with us, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.